Hello and welcome to part two, where I'm showing how to make LCD, handheld, VFD, or Game and Watch style games in Game Maker Studio, because they work a little bit differently than traditional games that you would make in Game Maker Studio. In part one, I covered Coleco style games, which were mostly VFD displays, single color, very simple. Now I'm going to look more at Game and Watch style or panorama. They're specifically their panorama color LCD games, which were movement worked a little bit differently. So in those Coleco games, they were VFD displays, and your characters sort of looked the same no matter where you were. Now, if we top up on the screen, the kind of game we're going to make now is more like this. So this game I made is called Felix's Construction Site. It's based on the Game & Watch game Helmet. It's sort of a clone of that, so I could teach myself how to make a game like this. Another example would be Donkey Kong Jr., the panorama version of Donkey Kong Jr. It's color, and it's very pretty. You can see the graphics are, overlap, the colors overlap, and very good for the time. But the pieces are still lighting up individual pictures, right? I can see in the faded background here that when DK Jr. moves, when Donkey Kong Jr. moves, it's just unlighting one segment and lighting up a different segment. So I can see there's a balloon here, a balloon here, a balloon here, and it's lit up here and it's lit up there, right? There's DK Jr., here's a bird, here's a coconut falling slowly, right? It's just lighting up those different segments. And as you move around, the image of DK Jr. just changes. It changes. He's not the same shape. It looks like he's actually moving. The way I'm going to make that happen, and if we bring up our Game & Watch game again here, you can see it's the same in my game, right? Here's a fully lit segment board, which those Game & Watch games would do too. When you first boot them up before we start a game, it'd show you every possible place for an object to be, right? Same goes here. Here's our character. Here's Felix. He's moving across, trying to avoid these things as they fall. But you can see, and if we start a game up, he's still jumping from place to place. He instantly moves from place to place. Those segments are being lit up and delit, but his sprite's a little bit different in each time. And he's not equidistant. That's the other hard part. He's not exactly one distance away from each other in each position. He might be 50 pixels to the left and then 75 pixels to the left. He might be a little higher or a little bit lower. It's not equal. So when I'm pressing left and right, that might change a little bit. How much he moves changes a little bit. So we can't use the last methodology, which was simple. We just put in a movement base that said every time you move left or right, move exactly this number of pixels. In this case, we have to find something that sets the sprite to look a certain way and move you the correct amount of pixels based on where you are. So how do we accomplish that? We'll go ahead and we'll kill Felix off. Now it's all lit up again. You can kind of see right here he's facing left, here he's facing right. The positions look similar, but they're not exactly the same. Here he's looking up a little bit, looking down, all that jazz. So over in Game Maker Studio, we have the game loaded up. Here I have all the sprites for my Felix character, and I'll actually resize it so you can kind of see at equal size. The first thing I do, just like before, is I draw the full game board. This is the same methodology. I drew all this out first. I made my full game board, so I knew how big the board was going to be. I knew exactly what position Felix would have to be in each case. Okay? Where he'd have to be. Same with these. I knew exactly where they were going to be. Then I came in here and I created individual frames for Felix for each of those positions. So there he is all lined up. Let's look at our game again. There he is all lined up. That's the sprite for Felix. Notice how I set the speed to 0. That way the speed's never moving. Now I come into my object for Felix. And instead of moving him like a traditional object, where if I press left, for example, his speed gets set to 10 maybe, and it moves to whatever direction I'm holding, and it moves that distance. Or, like in part 1, where I said, if I press left, always jump 120 pixels to the left, maybe. In this case, when I press left, it says set the hero position variable, I'm creating a variable, 1 lower. Okay, we'll ignore this first part and I'll explain why I have that later, but the main part you need to know is it's saying take that variable and make it 1 lower. Take the variable hero position and make it 1 lower. Now let's look at the right movement. Take that hero position and make it 1 higher of what it is relatively. So when I press left or right, it's actually not moving Felix at all. It's not moving my sprite or my object at all. It's just making a variable go higher or lower. Okay, why do we want to do that? Well, let's go into my step. The step event is an event that happens every single frame of your game. So after every frame, this entire step runs through. And what I do here is all this step event does is check what the variable is. It says, check the variable, and if that variable hero position is equal to a number, in this case 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If it's equal to 0, make Felix go to that exact location and set Felix to that exact sprite. Interesting. Let's go into our room. And check some of this out. So there's Felix, there's our character. What's his current position? His current position is 96 and 364. Okay, let's go back to our workspace. There it is. 96, 364. So if my hero position variable is equal to 0, I want him to be there. Let's continue looking. If the hero position variable is equal to 1, set him to be at 173 and 370, and set the frame of Felix to be 1. Okay, let's look at our room again. You can see here sort of faded in. There's another position of Felix. Looks like it's really tough to see, so I might bring up another screen. Look at it here, right? That position is equal to those same numbers. 173 and 370 is equal to that position. So jump him to that point and set the frame to 1. Well, what does frame 1 look like? Let's go to our Felix sprite. Frame 1 is right there. He's sort of looking to the left and his foot is up. We look at our game, there it is. Looking to the left and the foot is up. So ultimately what I'm doing for this game is when I press left or right, it's increasing the variable of that special variable I created, and that variable is constantly being checked. My game is constantly checking that variable. And whatever, based on what that variable is, it says, oh, I'm supposed to put him here, 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 wherever, and set him to look like this, this, or this. I do the same thing for these objects. It starts by going there, and then it falls and falls and falls. I just have it do it automatically. Instead of being moved with left or right, I have it set to automatically do that every couple of seconds, right? To automatically keep falling down, down, down. So let's look at the code again. Again, when I press left, it's saying make my variable go up or down 1. So left, make the variable go down 1. Right, make the variable go up 1. And then my step, which is constantly happening, is saying, okay, check what that variable is. Based on what it is, send Felix to the exact point that lines up with one of these spots, and then set the animation, set the sprite to use a specific frame. So in this case, you know, it's saying at the very end, it should be frame 6. Frame 6, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is kind of halfway. He's cut through the door, and we can look. There he is. He's kind of cut through the door. So he should be at that position, halfway cut off. Let's actually build this out. So I'm going to close this game out and open our test project instead. So we have this new game. Okay. I'm going to create a new sprite. Okay. Again, I'm going to set everything to be the center. Centered up. Let's edit the art here. And I'm going to have him start red, just like in our first demo. Fully red. But I want there to be some more frames here, so I'll do 3 more frames. So this one we'll do green. This one we'll do light blue. And this one we'll do purple magenta. Okay. We exit out of that. And now you can see we have 4 different frames for our character, so we can pretend this is some character. I want the speed to be 0. Okay. We need to turn him into an object, so we'll create a new object. Object 1, we'll have that use our new sprite 1, the one we just created. He starts as red. Add event. When we create him, the very first thing we need to do is set that variable, right? Let's set a global variable, and we'll say hero position. We want that variable to be 0. Okay. Then, when you press left or right, we want to set the global variable, so hero position. So when you press left, we want that to go down 1, relatively. And when we press right, we want it to go up 1, relatively. Okay? Then we need something to detect that variable, right? So, we're going to go ahead and create a step event. Step events happen constantly. They're always checking. If variable global.heroPosition, let's say, is equal to 1, something's going to happen. Okay? And we're going to we'll end up spreading that out, right? So we'll do this a couple times. We need to detect different variables. Because ultimately we have 4 different positions for our sprite. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. And what's going to happen, we'll find out soon. Now we're going to put our dude in a room. So let's make our room, in this case we're going to do more of a widescreen room. Let's do 640 by 400. Sort of a wide, a panoramic view, kind of like those Game & Watch games were. And let's put our new object in there, right there. Okay. Okay. Now, if I was making this game for real, just like my first style, the very first thing I would do is I would draw this full board so I knew where everything was going to go. I would know exactly where each of these positions were. I would make it in Photoshop or Illustrator, and then measure the distance between them, or find out the exact pixel location on my board of where they were. In this case, we have our guy. We want him to move, so many pixels to the right. So we know this is going to be one, let's say this is going to be one position. We'll call this position, 1. So I'm going to write down the coordinates of this one on a notepad so we remember. So the current position of our guy is 64 by 288. That's our first position. Okay. Now let's say we want our next position to be here. He moves up a little bit. What's that? 192 by 224. Okay. Then I'm going to have him move something like this. That's 320 by 320. And then our fourth position is going to be way over here, and that is 512 by 256. Great. So to start, we want them at 64 by 288. Okay. Save our project. So now we know all of our positions of where we're going to want our little dude to go. So we can edit our object again. Here it is. So we have our 1, 2, 3, and 4 positions. We want to jump to a point. In this case, we're not going to use relative because we have an exact point we want it to go. In this case, it's 64 by 288. So jump to this exact location, 288, when the variable is equal to 1. Great. When the variable is equal to 2, something's going to happen. When the variable is equal to 3, and when the variable is equal to 4, something's going to happen. So our spots, again, are 192 by 224. $320 by 320. And 512 by 256. Okay. And in this case, we always want to check the global for a global hero position. There we go. Okay, so when we start out, we'll have it at 1, the hero position at 1. So when our character is created, we set the variable to 1. This step event is constantly checking what the variable is. And based on that variable, we'll send our character to these locations. And then the left and right keys just increase that variable or decrease it, one down or 1 up. Okay, so let's build our game and see what happens. Okay, so when I press right, the variable increased by 1 and it moved my character. So as you can see, I'm moving to an exact location. Those locations we determined as my variables go up and down. But I'm staying red. Nothing changed. My sprite didn't change. So that's the next item we have to do. Just like this character, we want him to change slightly as he goes to different positions. So we go back to our step event, and we just have to add the sprite frame. So we just have to set the sprite to be frame 0 in this case when we're in the first position. Set the sprite to be frame 1 there. Set our sprite to be frame 2 there. Set our sprite to be frame 3 there. We can get that by looking at our sprite, right? Remember, it starts with 0, so 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's run our game. So I'm red, green, blue, purple. And there you go. Now you have that sort of Game & Watch style movement. You're jumping, you're changing. You know, instead of just changing color, obviously you could change shape, change the position, change your rotation, all that stuff, so that you're in the exact position. What I would recommend is finding out if you want your character to move around, you know, look like he's really moving around. Find out what the biggest instance, the biggest version of your sprite is, and set them all to be that size. The sprite to be that size, and then just make the character within it smaller or rotated within. So these are all, for example, like 120 by 120 square, I think. Even though this character is clearly smaller than that character. That just makes your lining up of things a little bit easier when they move around. Otherwise, it just gets a little bit messy. So that's how you do that movement. From there, you just create the game so that there's interaction, right? When you detect collision with one of these events, you should have him die, lose a life, move, all that stuff. I also created some code so that the variable could never go lower than 0 and could never go higher than 6, right? In our case, I would probably make it so that for this game, I would make it so the variable could never go down to 0, but could never get up to 5. Otherwise, your character, my variable could go, you know, I'm pressing right on my keyboard right now. The variable's probably up to 50 or 60 right now. And if I press left once, he doesn't move left until I keep pressing left enough times to get my variable lower. So you want to make sure to build that into your code, that the variables can never go higher than you want. That's it. Thanks for watching. If you're curious to have me make a game from scratch, completely make one of these games, show you every part of it, I definitely can do that. Leave a comment or subscribe or give a thumbs up and let me know. But hopefully that helps you make a Game & Watch or Coleco LCD VFD style game. Thanks for watching. Bye.